Howdy, y'all. Now I reckon, since you're here at this here congregation, you might be having some of the same issues we are. Feel free to hoot and holler if you are. Do you have users wondering where in the tarnation to find their content? Or maybe you got data strewn out all over the place. You want to wrangle it on in. Maybe you just got varmint. Well, I'm the sheriff. I'm here to talk about how we went from 74 sites down to 2. And that's about the extent of my accent there. Hi there, I'm Nick Roush. I am a consulting systems developer at BNSF Railway. And like I said, we're here to talk today about how we went from 74 sites down to 2 and tamed what Tableau would deem the Wild West. Before we get into that, you might not know a lot about BNSF other than we stop you from getting somewhere because we're blocking the road. But we operate in the western 2/3 of the United States, essentially from the Mississippi River to the Pacific coast. A fairly large company. We have 44,000 employees all across our network, with a lot centered in Fort Worth, Texas, which is where our headquarters is. We have a 170-year history that started with a 12-mile branch in Chicago. Went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. In 1995, the BN and the SF formed together to make the BNSF. Very original, right? And then in 2010, we were purchased by Berkshire Hathaway. So we are a Berkshire Hathaway company. We move a quarter of the nation's rail freight, and some would say we're the #1 nation in America, which would make us the #1 nation in the world, or the #1 railroad in the world. A slight bit about me. I was born in Oklahoma. I have been in a tornado, and I did not ride a horse to school. From there, I took a short drive down I-35 to go to Texas Christian, TCU, go Frogs. There I did a double major in business information systems and supply chain management. As part of my business information's degree, I had to intern somewhere between my junior and senior year. And I was fortunate enough to get in at BNSF, one of the top companies in Fort Worth. Liked it enough that I signed on and started there in 2009. I did a bunch of things on the customer portal, and then in 2014 got moved over to my current team, BI Services, where we do a lot of essentially managing the BI infrastructure. In the lower left-hand corner there, you can see my boss and I giving the thumbs up at our first Tableau conference up in Seattle, TC14. And to the right, you see my beautiful wife and our 2 adorable fur babies, Lady in Shanghai there. Recently married just about a year ago. I wanted to give a little bit of information about our Tableau environment because I think it can be helpful to do some comparisons. As far as our server goes, we have about 18,000 defined users on our server. We get about 5,000 users a month, I would say, performing at least one sort of action, generally a hit. And in about 3 months, we have 10,000 users that would get a hit or get an email. As far as monthly counts go, 95,000 hits a month. And I think we're pretty background process heavy. We have 100,000 emails that we send out every month and 50,000 extracts that we perform. All of this on just 3 machines. One of our machines is dedicated to VizQL, one is dedicated to backgrounders, and then starting in June of this year, we went to 18.3, the TSM version, and we flip one machine back and forth between VizQL and backgrounder depending on the time of day. For our desktop environment, we have over 300 desktop licenses. Most of these users are located at our headquarters in Fort Worth. And about 2/3 of the users are either in our TS department, our IT department, or within our operations department. All right, so let's talk about how we started off before we talk about where we got to 74 sites. So we enabled Tableau Server in March of 2014, and I kind of think about this like playing the Oregon Trail game. Anyone play that growing up? My sister and I played it quite a bit. So we were really concerned about our server resources. We only had 8 cores to start, and we didn't want our oxen to drown when they forded the river, or we didn't want little Timmy to die of cholera along the way. So what we were really concerned about was someone saying, hey, I want to roll a report out to all 44,000 of our employees. We just didn't think that we could handle that. So what we did is we set up a process where people could request a site. We would have a little chat about what they were trying to do. And then we would set a user cap to that site, generally less than 1,000 users, although in some cases we went up to about 3,000. And our real goal was true end-user self-service, right? My team manages the server. You guys do whatever you need to do because you're the business and you know best and you know what's going on out there. Well, that led us to 74 sites pretty quickly. And it left a lot of people feeling a lot like Clint here, right? A little awkward, a little lost. He might be about to pull out his 6-shooter and shoot me, basically. We had users with 30-plus sites, right? Where do you go for the right content? As an example, let's take one of our customers, UPS. So for a UPS report, you might go to our consumer products marketing site, or our equipment site, or our BU ops site, or our revenue site, right? How do you know where to get there? How do you get the right permission? Generally speaking, you had to seek that out or be told by someone. Or if you're an executive, you told me to do it, basically. As far as developers go, right, they were pushing that same content out kind of over and over again. Same data, same workbooks in some scenarios. We had one data set that was published across 15 different sites. If there's a change to, say, our revenue calculation, right, you can imagine someone might forget to do one of those 15 different sites, and they, in fact, did do that quite often. And then from the site admin perspective, people were constantly having to add users, constantly having to go in and adjust things, having to tell me that they needed more users. So in 2017, I started really realizing this was a problem because I had no idea what was going on out there. Someone would tell me, hey, where can I find this? And I didn't want to really go look across 74 sites and search and find where it was located, right? So we tried to develop a new vision, and we really wanted to accomplish 3 main things. We wanted to improve our security. So as a company, we think about safety first, but in our IT department, we want to have a security-first mindset when we're doing our development. Of course, we wanted to make that end user and developer navigation a whole lot easier. And the third thing was trying to enable the data democratization, right? This idea that sharing data will lead to essentially more insights from people that you would never expect. I got a clicker, I forgot that. So we came up with a plan to apply some law and order out there, and we came up with 2 sites, the BNSF site and the restricted site. The BNSF site is really where we want a lot of our content to live, right? If you think about the sites are kind of these hard lines, these silos that people put their content into, and we wanted to kind of take those down, make it easier, and we came up with 3 laws. Law number 1, all exempt employees must have access. Law 2, permissions are locked. And law 3, you can't just blanket grant access to everyone, so you can't give that all users group access. We wanted to make this easy, so we developed a way to automatically create a project for people, which I'll talk about more in a second. Of course, we still realized that there was probably going to be a need for some people with sensitive data. Our HR department, for example, didn't want to give all of our exempt employees the ability to see everything. So on the restricted site, we just have one law. You can't give it to everyone by default. And there is still somewhat of a process to create this project. They fill out a simple form, and then I review it with them, and we create the site for them. So our restricted site is still kind of like having 74 sites, I would say, right? Because there's permission managements at different levels. People can't see all the content out there necessarily. But it's definitely been a much better approach. So we had our idea. We knew what we were going to do. So we had to have a plan about how we were going to implement this. And so we started on what I called the Great Content Migration. We had a 4-month timeline here. I am not these people's bosses. This is, in a lot of cases, some extra activity for them, right, to move their content over. So 4 months, we started in October of 18. Our goal was to end on January 31st of 2019. As you can see, we really were just sending reminders out. Hey, this is happening. Hey, this is happening. In January, hey guys, this is really happening. We're really going to do this, right? At the time, there was no easy way to migrate the content. A lot of people asked me if they could just script it. While this was probably technically possible, or we could have purchased a product to do this, really we wanted people to think about the content that they were moving over, right? Use our content usage report to make a decision about whether you really needed this report still. And even though Tableau has come out with their server management add-on right now, which of course costs a little extra money, I still think manually moving it was a pretty good thing for us at the end. So how did it go? Well, it went pretty well for most people. A lot of people simply had to download their report, or maybe 5 to 10 reports, create a new project, push their new content to the project, communicate that to their end users, and that was the end of it. But other people were not very happy. If you had hundreds of reports, I was one of those people that had hundreds of reports, it took a little effort to move all that content over, especially if you wanted to push something back to your current site and say, hey, the new report is here, right? And people with custom views they were really crying. I have a report that had over 100 custom views. Custom views are great in Tableau Server for getting things set up right, but they're a little bit finicky, right? I don't know if you have if you've used them a lot, but any slight change in your extract and your data source will essentially kill all of your custom views. And there's no easy way to tell what people are really filtering on other than looking at every single custom view. But in the end, most people did move their content over. We didn't really have a hard timeline at that 4 months. So beginning in January, people started coming to me, hey, I'm not going to make this, right? I've got to move a lot of this content over. We worked with them to set some new dates, and by the end of February, we were able to successfully close all of our 74 sites and just have 2. A few things about how we helped accomplish this and still providing a good level of self-service, I think. So we have no site admins anymore, just server admins and project leaders. Project leaders don't have the same ability in every regard that site admins do. Right? They cannot create the top-level projects. They can't add groups to server. And so what we did is we used the REST API to develop a little Java app where people can go in and automatically create a project, automatically sync a group to both of our sites so that they can then go and do their permissioning from there. And that's generally, so I said all exempt employees have access. We kind of have 3 classes of employees or contractors. So we have exempt employees, scheduled employees, and contractors. So at the base, exempt employees have access. If someone, say, in the field that's doing some stuff on the trains needs access, people can add them. It's just a few simple steps. It's gone very well so far. Right? People find it much easier to navigate. As you can imagine, having 2 sites is a lot easier than having 30+ sites to have access to. So A lot of people are utilizing search now. We've recently gone to 19.2, so a lot more people are starting to utilize their favorites to quickly find things on the new homepage. Permission management has become much, much easier, right? Especially on the BNSF site where those permissions are locked. People don't really have to think about things. In a lot of cases, they don't have to add additional grants, except if they want to do another project leader or a new publisher or something like that. And of course, finding the reports and data and our data democratization goal is going pretty well. So what have we found after we did this? Well, I've found that actually the administration through groups has really helped improve our security. A lot of our site admins before were just adding users through the Users tab, add user, put in an ID, add that user there. The big benefit to doing things through groups is when people get removed from the groups, they get put into the unlicensed status. And now we have a weekly process that goes through and cleans up all of our unlicensed users. Right, kind of an extra level of security in case somehow they were able to still get into our system. It's also been very beneficial for helping people that have left our company that still own content. Right, now, when you try and delete those people, they're still there. So I can reach out to the project leaders and say, hey, you need to update this ownership here because you need to have an active person who's managing your data or your report. And then it really gave us a clean slate. So we were running lots of extracts. We're still a core-based customer, so we were kind of hitting our limit in terms of our processing. You can see we cleaned up about a third of our extracts, about half of our emails, and we found that 50% of the workbooks did not get moved over. Right? So from 2014 to end of 2018 when we were doing this, we'd had some bloat. People don't like to go in and clean up their data. I've tried to implement some archive processes that haven't gone super well because we would remove something that gets emailed out once a month, but it's super important, right? And so now we have a little bit cleaner slate. So what have we learned? And where are we going? Well, one thing that I certainly learned was taking a snapshot after I closed all the sites was very, very beneficial. So as one of our items in our best practices for migrating your content was, I'm not going to keep this data around, right? You, as the developer, need to either download the workbook, save it somewhere that you have access to. But of course, people didn't do that in every case. And for about the next 6 months, I still had people come back, hey, do you have this report somewhere? So I took a backup after we closed all the sites. I put it onto another server that essentially only I have access to. And if someone came to me and said, hey, I need this report, I was able to go download it, give it to them, and we could proceed on from there. As far as next steps go, we're going to really start pushing published data sources pretty soon. We have like 4,000 workbooks on our server at this point in time. Only about 200 of those are utilizing published data sources, or we only have about 200 published data sources out there. And we really want to start pushing that with things like Ask Data and stuff, right? Having the published data source allows the people to utilize those new features. So I feel like I went pretty quick there, but please evaluate me.